In last week's podcast episode, we spoke with Judd Legum. After the episode, we received a letter from Melania Trump's lawyer. He took issue with our title of one of those YouTube videos from that episode and a couple of comments I made about the First Lady. We took a look at what they complained about, and we took down the video and edited out those comments from the episode. I also take back these statements and apologize.
Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week our guest is UMass Amherst Professor of Political Science, Alexandra Theodoridis. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicswarroom@gmail.com for next week's show. We'll get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at politicon.com. Tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Please check out the link to our sponsor, Green Chef, in our show notes. We thank you for supporting our sponsors. It helps make this podcast happen. James, as you know, was out of town for 10 days. I did the podcast last week from London. I got back thinking nothing has changed. It has. It's gotten worse. It's more repressive. He fires the head of the BOS because he doesn't like the economic numbers. His once honest top economist says, yeah, he's right. Trump is always right. Now he wants to put someone in who will try to rig the numbers. He wants to take over Washington, D.C. because a Doge bully called Big Balls got mugged. You know, young black kids get mugged regularly, and Trump doesn't seem to get upset. Crime is actually down in Washington, D.C., by the way. But the worst is the Trump-ordered Texas redistricting. And that state and elsewhere, where they're going to lose the midterm elections, they know. And in order to rig the process and avoid that inevitable, they want to rig the redistricting in the middle of the decade, picking up as many as 5 Texas seats. What Trump and his Texas lackeys want is for the politicians to pick the voters. That's not the way it's supposed to happen in American politics. The voters are supposed to pick the politicians. You know, and I've been a big advocate, James, of independent redistricting commissions. I actually think they've worked in a number of states where they've been tried. But I think they create many more competitive districts. But Democrats, starting with California, would be crazy to play by these rules and unilaterally disarm. Trump will keep playing dirty elsewhere. So the big question is whether they can win or at least neutralize this. Maybe not. But with Trump, there's no honor in American politics, so go after him every day.
Well, let's start with the overall picture. Even right now, before they do this, it's something like over 52% of the popular vote. The Democrats have to win to control the House. Now, traditionally, we were taught in ninth grade civics that the House is the people's house. It runs every 2 years. It's the most responsive to the will of the people. Well, it's not really that right now, and it's going to get worse. The other fact we need to know is that 18% of the population elects 50 United States senators. Now, that can't change because that's in the Constitution. The other thing we need to know is that the Republicans in this century, in 6 elections, have won the popular vote twice. They control 2/3 of the Supreme Court. That's not good. And if you want to, the Democrats talk about democracy, and you have these people, importance of democracy and preserving democracy and saving democracy. Well, the truth of the matter is, people are right when they say this democracy is really imperfect. And they're going to have to do, if the Democrats win the presidency, the Senate and the House in 2028, which is not impossible. I don't know if you say likely or possible, or I don't know what word but it's certainly not impossible. They are just going to have to unilaterally add Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia states. They're going to have to, the Constitution gives Congress power over federal elections. I don't think they can redistrict, but there are things they're going to do. They're going to have to do it. They're just going to have to do it. And they may have to expand the court to 13 members. Any of those things in isolation, I would be skeptical about. I would be cautious about. I would say, well, I don't know if that's the greatest idea in the world. You're opening Pandora's box, or all kinds of things. I don't. If you want to save democracy, I think you got to do all of those things because we just are moving further and further away from being anything close to democracy. And I don't know if it's something that they should talk about during the campaign. I guess you probably would want to, because if you have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senator, and a Democratic President, they should do that on day one. 4 more United States senators, 4 more Supreme Court members, and some stringent national legislation on how you can do Congress. They could easily pass a law saying you can only redistrict once every 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, would it precipitate a constitutional crisis? Would the Supreme Court say you can't expand to 13? Would they say that some impediment to adding 2 more states? Sure. And what they do, they'll just issue a ruling on the shadow docket saying that it's overturned, but that you got to force ahead.
Yeah, the shadow document is supposed to be the emergency document. You only rule when there's an emergency. The shadow document now is emergencies or when Trump needs it.
Right.
And that's what they've done.
And they don't give you a reason anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so I don't know. I really don't. But if you're going to save this country or this republic or whatever you want to call it, you're going to have to do something in 2028 because it's slipping away from us by about a minute.
Well, I agree. But if you take control of the House and the Senate, you can lay the groundwork in 2027. You can start at least. And,
Yeah, you can do, there's all kinds of, I mean, and he's panicking because he knows it's going to happen if the Democrats get even one the legislative chambers back. So he's in Dunmore. It was his idea. He called Greg Abbott and said, I want 5 from Texas. He's a scared old man. And you can just see it. And his rambling and incoherent shit. And he's at 71% approval in the polls.
That's approval.
He does not care. He doesn't care. The Supreme Court doesn't care. They don't even go to the trouble of giving you reasons anymore. It's that amazing. It really is.
One thing that he does care about and never talks about is the Epstein scandal, which won't go away. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner in crime. She, by the way, is a convicted sexual predator, and the court said she was a perjurer, too. She was transferred to a country club prison right after she spent 2 days talking to Trump's lawyer and consummate loyalist, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Every move is being directed by Trump. How do we know that? Because he was told about this months ago, and he's scared stiff of this. I have no idea why. And when he says he didn't know, I had no idea that Maxwell was transferred to that country club prison. No one believes that. Reportedly, James Vance, A.G. Bondi, the FBI director, I'm sure Blanche, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, are meeting to plot how they handle the Epstein problem. Whatever they devise, there are 2 elements we can rule out: truth and transparency. James, one of the things we saw in that hostile Republican-held town hall in Nebraska was that the Epstein scandal really cuts deeply with those voters.
Yeah, what I would suggest that anyone do is just Google the U.S. Attorney's memorandum on the sentencing of Ghislaine Maxwell, where they laid out how many lives she ruined. And look, this one woman, they passed her around. Of course, she's committed suicide. And we can't imagine the emotional human carnage that was inflicted by this whole thing. But you must read the sentencing memo, and the government could have prosecuted her easily on 3 or 4 more cases of perjury, but they didn't need to do that because they had so block cold on the other stuff, and she got, by the way, since the judge gave her 20 years. It's no, there's no connectivity to any law, any sense of decency, any sense of fairness. And I hate to say this, but I think the only thing we can do is fight, is close to the edge of the law as you can possibly get.
James, I agree. I want somebody, some lawyer representing those victims to talk more, to come out more, to talk about the outrage, to talk about the pain, to talk about the suffering, to talk about the loss of life, to let people know what a truly, genuinely evil person this is.
Oh, God. I mean, just what came out of trial. Understand, she had the right to cross-examine. She confronted the witnesses. I mean, just look at what happened. Suppose that had been your daughter or my daughter, anybody listening to this podcast, and these girls were like 13 years old and the promise of a career, and they would groom them and harvest them. It's like it's unbelievable.
Well, and we really, by the way, Todd Blanche, who wants to get to the bottom of this, he never talked to any of those victims, at least as of a day or two ago. Wonder why not, James?
Oh, man.
God.
It's so unbelievable, and it's happening right in front of you. And he talks about crime in D.C. Right, you pointed out. Violent crime is like down 26%. It's down everywhere. By the way, it's one of those things that I wish that like somebody good, like the Atlantic or the Times, say Jim Fowler's would do a long-term piece. Is what's driving this? I mean, I suspect it spiked up during the pandemic, and you can kind of see why these young people didn't go to school. They were locked up, some 2-3 generational house. I guess that led to it, but I'd like to get some people to take a stab at it. How this thing has dropped so fast.
Yeah, I think part of the reason is better policing, smarter policing. I mean, one of the people who I've never met but really impresses me is the New York City police chief, a daughter of billionaires, Jessica Tisch. You never would have thought that someone like that would be a terrific police chief. She is. By the way, she went to that sad funeral the other day of that Muslim police officer who was killed at 375 Park Avenue when some crazy guy was trying to go after the NFL. And the governor went, and they wore headscarves. He was a Muslim. It was in respect to that. And there were 100 women police officers reportedly there, all of whom wore headscarves. But somehow Ted Cruz found that offensive. And there's one reason Ted Cruz found that offensive, because he's a bully, he's a coward, and he's a bigot. But in any event, James, I want to.
I guess what I'll put in a plug too. We have the same situation. We have a female police chief here in Yawns who's by everybody. I met her, know her name is Ann Kirkpatrick, and causation and correlation. But since she became chief, the crime has fallen to the bottom of the floor, much like New York. Maybe the new trend in policemen are, these really smart women. I don't know. It's something to think about.
I think a key test for this likely young socialist mayor is keeping that police chief.
I do too. I think that would go a long way. I agree. Now, she's a member of the Tisch family. They're part of
They're right, billionaires.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that someone like that? But she must be one tough cookie.
Absolutely.
She really must be. That finally brings me around to one more subject, courtesy of our friend, former Judge Michael Ludig, who noted the other day that judges around the country ruling against Trump's arbitrary actions are under serious threat. John McConnell of Rhode Island, for example, has received multiple death threats. He said, I've been on the bench for 15 years, and this is the first time where I question whether we're a country that's going to continue to support the rule of law. But the question that Judge Ludig and others ask is, where's John Roberts? The Chief Justice is supposed to want to protect the judiciary. He hasn't said a damn word about these threats? Is he afraid of incurring Trump's wrath? Is that what guides John Roberts these days? It is, James, an outrage.
Well, when you were brought Tom Etzel wrote a column in the Times yesterday about how all these appellate courts, Republican judges, everything, overturning this stuff. They overturned this Trump's action. I don't know, I want to say if a high percentage of the time, the Supreme Court never goes against him. And you're right. The Chief Justice, I think by statute, is the head of the federal judiciary. I mean, he puts on and he had said something before, because I think he got scared, but I don't know if in Chief Justice Roberts' mind that it's okay to make a death threat against a judge that rules against Trump. I don't know what this guy. That's one person I never was fooled by, and they just, it's a rubber stamp operation. They don't even give you reasons. They don't give a shit. And whatever that guy, whatever he started out as his career in the judiciary, he's rubber stamp, doesn't even care about his own judges. I don't know.
He's like a lot of people these days in that party and others. He's scared, James, and he's acting like a scared man, and that really is outrageous.
I don't know, man.
Well, I'd like to say it's good to be back in the States. It's good to be back to see you, to be closer, to talk to you, James. But it was not a pretty picture to come back to.
No, it's going to get less prettier and less prettier. Yeah. There's no, I don't have any, the only thing that we can do, if they're going to do this, pull this thing off in Texas, we're going to be convoluted, and they're going to do it in Missouri and Indiana, and we're going to have, the whole country is going to have this massive redistricting fight. And I can assure you the Supreme Court is not going to do anything to make the system more fair, expedited. And there's all kinds of, 15th Amendment gives you the right to vote. Well, inherent in the right to vote is that your vote count. And that's when you intentionally try to marginalize one person's vote at the expense of another. It's pretty clear to me you're in violation of the 15th Amendment.
Well, just ignore all those high-sounding reforms that I used to write in support of, and you just ignore them. Go after them.
Right.
This is the law of the jungle, and when you're fighting animals, you can't play by Marcus of Queensberry rules.
Broke our friend John Maynard Keynes. When the facts change, I changed my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was John McCain or Bob Dole, Bush 41, let's have an election. This is something that people wouldn't have dreamed of. A lot of it is, McConnell has his fingerprints on this.
Sure, he does.
We should never forget that.
And I thought that after he was, I thought he would have a certain sense of liberation. And he did on one or two confirmations, but he's now been he's been a lapdog also. He's just gone along with whatever Trump wants. Trump hates him. Trump will try to demean him every chance he gets, but he apparently cares. He thinks he can still have influence in the Republican Party. Guess what, Mitch? It's over.
Old crow. Never Trump calls him an old crow.
It's over. Okay, we got lots more to talk about next week.
Don't think like that. And don't think that you're giving up taste for convenience and ease of preparation, because you're thinking wrong. You got Cajun steak and shrimp over dirty rice. That's tasty. I got to try it. This is high quality stuff, easy to prepare, and nutritional powerhouse.
Yeah, and summer is the perfect time for eating right and feeling good. And the secret is quick, quality meal kits from Green Chef. It's the #1 meal kit for clean eating, and the meals are more than just delicious. They are perfect partners for creating a routine that works with you, not against you. Now, James and I are amazed at how easy Green Chef makes it to spend less time in the kitchen, not my favorite place, and give yourself more time to enjoy the summer. With their new Heat and Eat meals, you can enjoy a delicious, wholesome meal in just 3 minutes. When you're on the go, there is nothing better for supporting your wellness journey. It's easy. Green Chef's recipes feature fresh, organic, seasonal produce and 100% responsibly sourced proteins to help you feel your best. No matter what your goals are, Green Chef's real, clean ingredients help you build lasting, healthy habits without the hassle. James is a big fan of their 5-minute salads, and nobody can get enough of their protein-filled breakfast or nutrition-rich smoothies made to fuel your day. Now, Green Chef is ready to nurture your nutritional needs, and they make it taste great every step of the way. Plus, with 80-plus dietitian-approved weekly meal options, it's easy to find meals that fit your lifestyle. You can pick from gluten-free, Mediterranean, plant-based, and protein-heavy, even gut and brain health, and calorie-smart choices also. The recipes change every week, and with week-to-week flexibility, you can adjust your plan to match your mood and your schedule. After switching to Green Chef, we have a great excuse to prepare food for our friends and families. I'll tell you, the Alfredo truffle cavatappi is so good, I'd head back to Europe if I couldn't get meals like that delivered. Don't wait. Join us in making this summer your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50warroom and use code 50warroom to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50warroom at greenchef.com/50warroom. The link is in our show notes.
Get cooking with Green Chef.
Hey, James, our guest is Alexander Theodoridis, a renowned political science professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Alex, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you guys.
Your UMass poll this week shows Trump approval plummeting. I mean, literally plummeting overall and on individual issues. At 38% overall, you're a little lower than others, but most everybody sees slippage. Why do you think?
Well, I just think that it's been a chaotic first 6 months, and I think that they have, every piece of evidence we've looked at suggests that, what we basically knew, that the conventional wisdom is right. People elected Trump because they weren't happy with the economy, they weren't happy about inflation, and they wanted him laser focused on those things. With some people also concerned about immigration. And for the most part, he hasn't focused on those things. And you could argue that a lot of the stuff that he's done at least seems to be counterproductive when it comes to lowering prices, when it comes to improving people's feeling about the economy. And so it stands to reason. A lot of the things that are in the one big beautiful bill and things that he's spent time doing, even if they aren't legislative, are not the things that people want him spending time on.
Alex, let me stay on immigration for a minute, because I think what that proves, his negative feelings about immigration, people forget immigration reform was a issue that helped Democrats up until Biden screwed it up and really permitted, a porous border. But, basically what I think most people want is border security. They want all criminals, arrested, deported, and then they want to create some kind of a pathway for hardworking immigrants to become citizens. But instead, what this guy is doing is going into parking lots and shopping centers and taking people and deporting en masse, which is not what he talked about doing during the campaign. And I think immigration is really, I think it's an issue that helped him almost as much as the cost of living in 2024. but he sure as hell has gone too far, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think if you look at the breakdown of public opinion on the various features of an immigration policy, I agree with what you said. I think it supports what you just said, which is there were concerns about immigration, and they were important, certainly to a subset of voters, right? I don't know how you sort of differentiate whether economic things are more important or less important. They're also connected. When the economy is not good, it's easy to sort of point to immigrants and say, look, this is why you're in this stressful position. But I agree with you. I mean, I think the things that at least have gotten the attention when it comes to immigration policy are not the things that are popular, right? What you just mentioned, sort of securing the border, developing a policy, a coherent policy. Those are things that would be popular. I don't know how we get there in terms of the coherent policy part, because it's very hard when you demagogue immigrants as a group, as this negative force, to then have a policy regarding them. And so that's one of the challenges we've faced. But I completely agree with you, and the public opinion data, including a lot of stuff from our new poll, supports that. People are not in favor of grabbing people out of churches and even at workplaces and things like that.
Alex, your poll underscores the importance of the economy and the dissatisfaction with how it's going. This is a real dilemma, it seems to me, for Republicans, because with the economy not achieving what Trump promised and they hoped for, Republicans have no choice but to run with the big beautiful bill, even though it's toxic on issues like Medicaid. They can't run away from that, can they?
Yeah, I don't think in general you can, if you're the incumbent party, you own what's going on, especially when there's, it's virtually impossible to point to anybody as obstructing what Republicans want to do. And to be fair, a lot of what's in that big beautiful bill is stuff that a lot of them want. It's not necessarily all stuff that Trump said he wanted to do. But a lot of it is policy that some Republicans, at least for years, have pursued. But a lot of it is unpopular, right? There's been, in general, I think a good message from political science, and this is what we try to do as the UMass poll, is we're political scientists first, and we like to bring that sensibility to our polling, what questions we ask, how we analyze the data. And I think a thing that's really important is you hear politicians all the time, and you've heard this a lot during these first 6 months, say that elections have consequences. I have a mandate. This is what I said I was going to do, and the voters voted for me. Politicians who are in office are much better off thinking about the consequences of the next election than the consequences of the last election. And I think that's something that is often lost on folks who are in office who come in and feel like they've got a mandate that they can ride for a long time. And that's not really how voters think. And actually, as a general matter, in political science, we kind of view mandates as a chimera. They don't really exist. They're kind of mythical beings pieced together based on what people want to believe.
Alex, let me ask you this. In your polling, and then I'll turn it over to James, how does Trump 2.0 approval compare to Trump 1.0 at this time?
It's actually pretty similar. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that approval ratings for a president, but really all approval ratings, are completely a different beast. From the time I was sort of coming of age in politics, and in '92 when Jim was electing Bill Clinton president. You had just had a president who had achieved 90+% approval ratings. George W. Bush achieved 90+% approval ratings. It's a different measure today because of polarization. You're never going to get that high, and you're never going to get as low as was possible in the past. And so it operates within a narrow window. Trump, of course, is the most polarizing figure in modern American politics. So his is trapped in a pretty narrow range. But even given that, these are low and concerning approval numbers. And I look in particular at numbers of people. It's almost half of Americans who strongly disapprove, and that's a hard group to win back. And in fact, the numbers of strongly approve among Republicans and among former Trump voters, is on the downward trend too. And so these are all things that I'd be concerned about. Maybe not if I were Trump. Maybe he doesn't care. But if I were, running against Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, or ramping up my campaign for 2026 on the Republican side, I would be very concerned about these numbers.
James.
Oh, so Prof, this poll, I went through it 3 or 4 times. It's from the vantage point of view of Trump, this is really bad news. The headline number would be 38% approval, but when you look at it, I think one of the 3 most important numbers in polling are strong approval and strong disapproval ratio. That tells you a lot. This is really, really a big gap. And even on issues like immigration that you would think he's not really doing that well on that either. And so, but your poll is worse for Trump than other polls. Tell our listeners what kind of rigor do you go through in your department to produce what you think is an accurate poll?
Yeah.
Because people are going to say, oh, it's just Massachusetts shit. They're going to say anything they want. Some fancy PhD, got a name you can't fucking pronounce. What do they know? So try to take us through what you do to ensure that you get accurate numbers.
Yeah. Well, we do, we view our poll as about much more than the horse race or just tracking approval. And I think that's our comparative advantage to other folks. We do our polling the same way The Economist does their polling. We use YouGov, which is a very reputable online polling firm. What I always tell people is that it's what's remarkable about polling today is that it's as accurate as it is, given the challenges. So again, going back to the 80s and 90s, that was the golden era of polling. Because what you want when you're doing survey research is you want a list of people and you want everyone on that list, that's your population, and the list is the sample frame, and you want everyone on that list to have the same chance of getting in your survey as everybody else, right? That's the magic with statistical polling, that with probabilistic polling, that allowed you to say, well, this group of 1,000 people or 1,500 people looks like this country of 300 million, right? Well, we've lost that. We used to have it because you could random digit dial, right? And there are 2 things you can't do anymore effectively because of caller ID. One is polling, the other is prank phone calls, right? Ask kids today, they can't do prank phone calls. Nobody's answering. And if they do, they know who you are. So polling has really suffered from this. And so there's a lot of work that has to go on at the front end in terms of recruiting a sample that looks like the population as much as possible, that's diverse. And then on the back end, once you get the data in terms of weighting and just making sure the sample that you have looks like what the population looks like. And so there's a lot of art to it. That part's also science, but I think it's remarkable how accurate the polls have been. But what they can't do anymore is tell you, like, is it 1%? Is a 1 percentage point race actually going in this direction or the other direction, or is it just really a tie, right? And I think that's one of the things that frustrates people about polling. Now, what we do is similar to what other outfits do. Again, we rely a lot on our partners over at YouGov, which, as I said, that's who I use for my research. It's who we use for the poll. And in terms of benchmarking, our numbers match up really nicely with both what other pollsters produce, but also what actually happens, right? So when you look at actual election results, or you look at actual, whether it's here in Massachusetts or in this case, this is a national poll, our polling tends to match up pretty nicely with what the actual population is when you get those chances to benchmark.
Yeah, I tried just for the listeners got informed. I went through, which percent, white, non-white, under 30, and it looks in line with everything else. But one of the topics that I'm kind of big on, everybody is male voters. He's not even doing that well with males now. I mean, I thought that was an interesting thing that you found. That's a big sample size. That's not, that's 48% of the interviews.
Yeah.
What are you seeing among males?
Well, I do think that's a group that moved a lot, and that has been very important to Trump. I mean, obviously, there's been a gender gap, throughout recent political history, but it's increased. And actually, one thing I've noticed is that voters used to not really be aware. Chris Matthews and others used to talk about the mommy party and the daddy party. And that actually wasn't something voters were aware of before, even as recently as the 2010s. Democratic men didn't feel like they were voting for the feminine party, and Republican women didn't feel like they were voting for the masculine party. That actually, awareness of that has increased with Trump. So that's something that he has made more salient for voters. And so, I mean, I think, a lot of these economic issues really are things that resonate with a lot of male and female voters, but in particular, some of the male voters that he was doing best with, who are folks who have been marginalized perhaps by, especially among white males, marginalized by the modern economy.
So if you were just, we're all political strategists, and the idea that if the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee asked you to go talk to the Democratic members of Congress, just assume that, should we just make an assumption? What would you say should be their central message in 2026? What do you think is your congressional candidate? And let's just assume you're a Democrat, and what would you be? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is that I think a lot of the panic is exaggerated. Coming out of the 2024 election, as you guys know, the sort of saying is that you learn more from losing than you learn from winning, right?
Do you? It happens to be true.
Well, it's true, because that's the only time you do any reflection, right? There's no introspection when you win. There's just congratulations and
right. We did everything right.
Balls, right?
Yeah,
to
right.
organize. But the truth is, especially when you have incredibly close elections like we've had the last 25 years, really. I mean, the only exception, you guys, I mean, 1984, 1988. Right. These are like blowout elections. Walter Mondale wins 2 places, not even 2 states, DC and Minnesota. Huge gap in the popular vote. Right. And there are lots of them before that. That's not possible in the current moment in American politics. So all our elections are close. All of them are, tiny little movements can be decisive. And that's because of polarization. But the bottom line is, like, there are things to learn just as much when you win by a percentage point as when you lose by a percentage point, right? And that's one of the things. So I think that the whole idea, like, we were incredibly close to a moment. If you just imagine had Harris pulled it out somehow, right? Everybody would be talking right now about how the Republican Party has to start from scratch. How can they move on after Trump, et cetera? And a similar sort of thing is happening on the Democratic side, even though this was a pretty close election. And so I think I would look more for tweaks. I would look more for the popular issues. And this is something you've been a big advocate for, James, is find the issues that really poll well. Child care, tax credit for families, things like that. And really focus on those things. Those are
Medicaid.
Yeah, yeah. All of those kinds of things. That's the bread and butter that really appeals to people. I don't think you have to really tear down the whole infrastructure on the Democratic side. I think that, Harris did pretty well in an election that, if it weren't Trump on the other side of the ballot, you would have said Republicans really ought to win this election, given how people felt about Biden.
So we'll turn back to Al, but you got your PhD from the University of Virginia, and I know you follow politics. I have
Undergrad UVA.
Undergrad.
So my allegiances are more there.
I'm sorry. I thought it was your graduate degree.
You want to add to the list of things that make me seem like a leftist. My PhD is from Berkeley.
Oh, okay. All right. So I apologize.
People's Republic of Berkeley.
You're right.
That's right.
So you follow politics. I have a 1,000-pound bet with Piers Morgan, and I spotted him 5 points in the current Virginia governor's race.
Yeah.
Who's got the better side of that trade?
I actually think you do.
Okay.
Even with that, with you giving up that many points. Right. I haven't looked at the most recent polling in Virginia particularly, but as you know, I'm from Virginia. I grew up in Charlottesville, went to UVA, spent a few years helping Larry Sabato start his Center for Politics there. Did a little bit of work in Democratic politics in Virginia before that, and so I know the state pretty well. This is a race where, the only case in recent history where the president's party has won the governorship is Terry McAuliffe, and that was a little bit of an aberration. And this is a case where, so you would expect, just based on the natural sort of flow of things, you'd expect Spanberger to do well. She happens to be, I think, a particularly good candidate. She also went to UVA like a year. I think she was a year younger or older than I was. Still am. And so I think she's a particularly strong candidate for Democrats, has done a very good job. And I think Winsome Sears is actually a pretty weak candidate for Republicans. Virginia is one of these states where, and there's a lot of them, Massachusetts is one of them too, where the polarization and the nationalization of politics has really changed things. You don't have the parties in those places in general thinking very hard about distancing themselves from the national party, which is probably what they ought to do in certain circumstances, right? Like Charlie Baker could still be governor of California if the Republican Party here didn't say, no, we don't care about winning. We want a purist. We want a Trump candidate here in Massachusetts where they can't win, right? And in Virginia, you need somebody like a Youngkin, or even more moderate than Youngkin to be competitive. It's a state where Republicans ought to be competitive. And by the way, this trend has major implications, because one of the things that used to be a real check on the national parties and on national party elites is that there were state parties that were trying to win in states where the numbers didn't favor them, right? So you'd get Republicans from Massachusetts, calling the White House saying, "Hey, you're killing us here with these policies. Can you please, dial it back," right? And you'd get Democrats, I'm sure you experienced this in the White House, James. You'd get Democrats from conservative states saying, "Hey, we're trying to win over here, and you're doing stuff that's gonna kill us." That just doesn't happen anymore, right? Because politics is so nationalized, and the party brands are so national now that the individual state candidates, don't matter as much as they used to. They only matter on the margin.
Albert?
Let me just ask you a couple, Alex. One, as you noted, we are so polarized. Seems to me there are two things that determine elections now. Number one is the energy, enthusiasm, turnout. Over 90% of Republicans are going to pull the GOP line. Over 90% of Democrats are going to vote blue. That's a given going into any election. So that's one thing that matters. The second are the independents. That independents really matter. And in your poll, Trump really has slipped with independents.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say independents generally, I tend to be somebody who pushes back on the notion of independence as super decisive. Because number one, I think most people are actually not independents. I think even a lot of the people who after we asked them twice, are you closer to one party or the
Smaller
other?
group, yeah.
Still say they're independents. That's about 10%, 15%. But I think even among them, a lot of them are actually closet partisans in this day and age. And the ones who aren't are generally not paying that much attention to politics, or they're attached to some, third party that they care about. But having said that, what I was saying before applies, is that polarization has made it so almost no voters are up for grabs, as you just said, and very few states are up for grabs. But it's also made it so the margins are tiny, right? Our current polarization is characterized by a tremendous amount of parity. And what that means is that even small numbers of independents, if they can get excited about a candidate or be encouraged to turn out, can make a difference. I don't think that's at the same level as exciting your base or scaring your base into voting. That I think is the main where most of the game is happening, and I think it's where Democrats didn't do well last time. There was not a lot of excitement. By the way, Democrats don't poll well in our latest poll either. So it's not just Trump. But I tend to think that matters a lot less. I tend to think that 2025 and 2026 and elections going forward are going to be about the party in power, going to be about Trump.
Well, one more. I want to point out, you mentioned Glenn Youngkin. He is leaving office as a colossally failed governor. He hasn't delivered. He's lost seats in the legislature. He couldn't get his big arena through. I mean, he won. I don't know. He's actually moved right. And he's a model most Virginians, I think, would not want to emulate.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, it has not been a great time to be incumbent, right? We used to talk about the incumbency advantage as this huge thing, and
I don't know. I mean, you look next door. Roy Cooper leaves office, very popular.
Right.
I mean, he really does. I mean, a number of other states. I just think Youngkin has been a political stiff, and he's failed.
I think that's probably fair. I think you also, again, are dealing with this challenge. I don't know Youngkin personally, and you're dealing with a party, again in Virginia that is not moving toward the median voter, right? That's going the other. That's really going the other direction.
Right.
And yeah, a lot of the things that he's done. I mean, I've actually honestly followed Youngkin the most when it comes to UVA, because I'm an alum and I, care about UVA, and what's happened there is, it's one of these institutions that has really, caved. Like the president just stepped down under pressure from the Trump administration and
from Youngkin.
Yeah, and from Youngkin, and from a board that Youngkin appointed all but 4 people on, and in fact, those people are all, I think, on their way out or out already at this point. So yeah, I think that generally speaking, it's not an easy time to be a candidate from a party, especially the Republican Party, because I think the Republican Party has moved much more right than the Democratic Party has moved left, and that has made it incredibly difficult to be a popular governor as a Republican in a place that really is a purple state. It looks blue in certain ways, but it's really a purple state.
James.
Prof, the one thing I'm glad to see is the term independent. It's one of the most misused terms in politics. You see these polls have 33% independent.
Right.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
All right. When you drill down, I 7.5 is probably the consensus number generally. That really, going to go back and forth. So just as an observer, in a poll question, when you look at these town halls that you see in Wisconsin and Nebraska, does it strike you that this is mostly a result of good organizing on the part of Democrats and activist groups, or does it strike you mostly that there's something organic going on out there?
Well, I think it's both, but
that's why I termed the question mostly.
Yeah, mostly. I do think there is something organic going on out there. It's not pro-Democrat. But again, that's not what you would expect exactly, right? It's not people
Right.
getting riled up about the party. There's a negative feeling about things. And while Democrats were in power, had the White House, that was on their laps, right? And now it's squarely on the laps of Trump and all these Republicans who are going home to their town halls. And again, people don't like chaos. People don't like, a different story every week. I am kind of amazed by how upsetting, and I guess it's you live by crazy, you die by crazy. But the thing that even the Trump voters are the most upset about Trump for right now is the Epstein thing, right? The second thing is the Ukraine war, which I guess they believed that he was going to finish that in 24 hours before he even took office. But they're very upset about the only 38% approval on handling of the Epstein files. 81% blame Trump specifically, as opposed to Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. And so back to your point, I think there is something organic out there. I don't know that all those people would come into the Democratic fold. Most of them wouldn't, but you do. I think there's material out there that Democrats can find success in 2025 and 2026 with, mostly just in frustration with the current administration and with Congress. And I agree with you, James. The one of my pet peeves has always been this independent voters. A lot of people are always, saying, "Oh, a third of Americans are independent." Well, no. The first time if you ask them, "Are you a Democrat, Republican, or independent?" a third will say independent. Then if you just follow up, you get down to about 15%. And it turns out a lot of those people are actually, partisans who just don't want to, fess up to being one side or the other. And by the way, they know the least about politics. They're the least engaged because it's hard. I mean, if you're paying attention to politics right now, it's incredibly hard not to know which side you're on. Right, in this polarized moment.
Prof, I can't thank you enough. And I know we have a lot. Anybody that is a political junkie or just likes to get into the weeds of politics or, do a MRI or whatever, this has been a illuminating show. And we thank you. Sorry, I apologize to the University of California at Berkeley. I didn't give them due credit, but I think that our listeners got some valuable insight today.
Well, thank you. And it's a treat to talk to you guys.
James, do you think we've been sycophantic enough to get invited back to Alex's class?
I don't know. We'll try.
You guys are welcome anytime.
There you go, man.
It was a treat for me to interview both of you guys from my class. You guys are absolute legends, and I don't just say that because you're old. I say that because it's true.
Well, we are old, and that certainly is a factor. But
but look, that's why I invite you guys, because the students think I'm old. I got to show them a point of comparison. That
you want to see real age. Let me show you Carville and Hunt. Yeah. Hey, Alex, you're terrific. Thank you very much.
Man.
Thank you, guys.
And we'd appreciate it.
Hey, now for the outrage of the week. James, this pains me, knowing your affection for SEC football. But why are those former SEC football coaches pretending they're qualified for politics? This week, Derek Dooley, the former coach at Tennessee, said he's running for the U.S. Senate in Georgia. That follows Auburn coach Tommy Tuberville, who won an Alabama Senate seat 5 years ago. When Tommy got here, he was asked about the separate branches of government. Tommy said it was the House, the Senate, and the executive. James, we've been very critical, Tommy, for that, but maybe he was prescient. Maybe he knew before we did that the Supreme Court would just be a Trump lapdog and part of the executive. But anyway, Tommy went on to do a lot more damage in office, once holding up for months the promotions, pay raises, and relocations of the Army's junior officer corps. Tommy is a terrible senator. He's going to run for governor, but he wasn't a bad football coach. He had a winning record. At Tennessee, Dooley won 16 games and lost 21, and he even had a losing record at Louisiana Tech. So Trump might call him a loser. At his first press conference, I want someone to ask Mr. Dooley, though, about the different branches of government.
Just Google, how stupid is Derek Dooley? Okay, wait a minute. He's Tubervillian. Okay, this is a guy who was not as good a coach as Tuberville was, but is every bit as stupid. Now, don't forget Bruce Pearl.
Oh,
Bruce Pearl is saying one stupid ass thing after another because he's a good basketball coach. Okay, I'm not going to say anything other than Bruce Pearl is not good. He's a very good basketball coach historically. I don't think anybody disagree with that. But he's trying to get in the stupidity carousel, and he's been doing a pretty good job. He's doing a pretty good.
Well, I'll give him that. I just don't want him to get into
Oh no,
politics.
he wants to. He's making. Oh, Bruce Pearl's making noise about running to be Tubervillian in his intellect. He's trying to prove that.
So what's your outrage, James?
So take a second. I'm the first year because I'm a New Orleans homer. I admit there's some things that we don't do very well. We don't do streets very well. Certainly a lot of people are more economically prosperous. The things that we do well, we do really well. We do Carnival well. Everybody knows that. I think you would admit that the World War II Museum is a world-class museum, particularly
Fabulous.
if you particularly take the United States involvement in World War II. The one thing that we did better than anybody else is, and it's 50 years old this year, is the Superdome. There is no stadium in the country that is even close to the Superdome in terms of its longevity, what it's hosted, its architecture. Just give you like a couple of things. New York Times proclaimed that the Superdome will make all other stadiums in existence as obsolete as Rome's Colosseum. The Houston Astros compared to the Superdome like Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis to a 747 jumbo jet. Damnedest thing I ever saw, wrote Ed Comerfield in Newsday after the stadium opened. Let me just take a little bit time to tell you like who is played there. Or let's take Muhammad Ali, okay, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Joe Burrow, Camilo Anthony, Brent Favre, Anthony Davis, Joe Montana, Jerry Bradshaw, Lynn Dawson, Roger Staubach, Nick Saban, Eddie Robinson, Mike Krzyzewski, Bill Belichick, Dean Smith, Don Shula, Bob Knight, Joe Paterno, John Calipari, Bear Bryant. Entertainment, Frank Sinatra, Mick Jagger, Whitney Houston, Billy Joel, Willie Nelson, Garth Brooks, Prince, Beyonce, and Taylor Swift. It is the greatest stadium ever built. And it's still in existence, and I can walk to it from my house. That's a goddamn quality of life enhancer if you think about it. Happy birthday, 50 years, Superdome. God damn it, we don't do much right, but what we do right, we do better than anybody else.
Yay, Coliseum.
Yeah, the only stadium that comes close, and it doesn't even come that close, would be the Los Angeles Coliseum. They had an Olympics. They actually did have a baseball season back in 1959, but they're not close.
And now for our listener questions. They actually seem to get better every week, James. David, in Lawrence, Kansas, home of the Allen Fieldhouse, wants to know what do the polls say, or really the overall question of Hispanic support for Trump in the wake of all these ICE raids. You think it's eroding?
Well, I mean, certainly the data shows that he's had substantial loss among younger, not white males. That I think that's a fact. That's something that I do look for. And again, what a lot of younger Hispanic males are leaving because they don't see anything being done about the cost of living. All right, Harris was not that good a candidate. Trump gave him a kind of macho kind of thing, but he's losing them. And I think cost of living matters more to young Hispanic males than immigration does. That's my guess, but I could be wrong. Or could be proven wrong.
I think you're right, and I would add healthcare. I think healthcare is very important. You put those two issues. A smart man one time said, James, I don't know if you've ever heard this. It's about the economy, stupid,
Right.
and don't forget healthcare.
Right.
And I think healthcare matters a lot to Hispanics.
What I'd say to that is healthcare is economic. I mean, anybody that does focus groups and people say, I'm one sickness away from bankruptcy. Or when you have an illness, it takes up one thing I just make a point of personal privilege. When you talk about 28-year-old, who don't work, sitting on the sofa, getting free government health care. Shit, what 28-year-old goes to the doctor or thinks they're going to get sick? Okay, you could probably insure every 28-year-old out of your back pocket if you had to.
James, I was the son of a doctor. And the first time after I moved to Washington that I went to see a doctor was, 5 years after I had moved here, 6 years after. It's when I had appendicitis. So I understand
I can assure
that
you that unemployed 28-year-olds and not by the way, 92% of people working age on Medicaid do work. It's such bullshit. Like that's what's breaking the country
really
is 28-year-olds going to the doctor 2 times a year on the government dime. It's just stupid.
Bobby in Columbus, Ohio. Bobby, I hate to tell you, I think your Buckeyes are going to get a whomping when they face the Texas Longhorns later this month. But anyway, we'll see. What is the Trump administration going to do, Bobby asked, with all that tariff money they bring? And I assume it's not going towards paying down the debt. A couple points I make, Bobby. Number one, there's still some really serious legal challenges of this tariffs. Now, I know you can't count on this high court to rule against Trump, but these are not frivolous cases. So he may have some of these knocked down. Secondly, he's not going to bring in nearly as much money as he says. And, the main effect will be that you're going to pay more, Bobby, not that the government's going to have more. And as for paying down the debt, it is whatever they bring in is infinitesimal compared to the added deficit created by the big, beautiful, ugly bill.
So one of the things we have a Sunday Zoom call that I was on all the time, but he was in Europe in Normandy, so he didn't this Sunday. But Roger Altman, and this is a very important point I want to make about all of this, referred to a column that Jason Furman wrote, and that tariffs are going to cause, it's not only you'll feel it immediately, but they're going to have an effect on GDP, a negative effect. So the tariffs do raise money. Okay, that is true. But the difference between having 2% growth and 1.75% growth in terms of government revenue is enormous. I'm not smart enough to do the math, but over a period of time, and that's going to be the effect of this. It's not going to be that one day you're going to wake up and you go, oh my God, the tariffs have ruined the economy. But it's pretty clear it's going to take away from overall growth in the United States. And my favorite tariff story worth repeating is a guy in Montana Knife Company. He was a Trumper, and he made knives, which is ultimate Montana, red state, Trump, male, makes knives. And he can't hardly make it because the machinery in it, I don't know, the lathe or whatever, you can only buy it from Germany. They don't even make it in the United States. And then there's a certain kind of steel that they don't make. And the guy said, he showed the receipts for what he's having to pay. And, I drive a Ford. Well, I think it was made in Mexico. I mean, Jesse was right. You can buy a Toyota made in Kentucky, or you can buy a Ford made in Mexico. But by the way, the steering wheel may be made in the United States or something else, and how you do the tariff. And, the domestic car industry is a North American business now. It's so idiotic and stupid, you can't believe it. And then if they announce these big settlements with Japan, Japan's going to invest $500 billion in the United States over the next 10 years. Well, they won't invest that anyway. Well, you think they make Nissans and Toyotas and Hondas and everything else, and Kentucky and Tennessee, and they make BMWs in South Carolina. His economic stupidity is really a sight to behold.
That it is. Barry in Mahwah, New Jersey. Mahwah, New Jersey, Barry asks, As a registered Democrat, I'm inundated with donation texts from every conceivable candidate and issue. It borders on insane. How does anyone know if the solicitations are legitimate, and is there a voter burnout? But the first question is, how do you know if it's legitimate?
Don't even look at it. Okay, you don't need to worry whether it's legitimate or illegitimate. And what I would say is I would pick out different campaigns, in a competitive district, and do your homework a little bit, because your money is valuable. Certainly you can look at the competitive Senate races. A lot of them are going to be coming up. And don't pay any attention to, and you get a lot of text from me. Okay, if you get one from me, it's legit. It's from the DNC or something like that. But not sure I would respond to my own text sometimes. I
always do, James.
I think people, right, here you go. I think people care enough to do just a modicum of homework and think of a couple of 3 House seats in kind of urban areas where your dollar will go a long way. The same thing with the Senate. I think that Senate recruiting had the potential to go very well this year. I would certainly think about Iowa. I would think about Ohio, and I would definitely think about Mississippi. But I would give it right to the candidate. I don't have a lot of faith in some of these state parties.
I've just elevated Ohio in my watch list because the word is that Sherrod Brown is seriously thinking of going, and I think this may be the perfect environment for Sherrod Brown to come back. But Barry, that's right. And I agree. Iowa and Michigan's an important race. And Barry, you could have a one or two congressional races in your home state of New Jersey, and next door in Pennsylvania, you're going to have 3 or 4. So there's lots of places for you to contribute.
Yeah, I'm on the Republican text or something that keeps it. I mean, they're like, Patriot, I told you to send money. You haven't responded yet. I'm going to tell President Trump on you. I mean, that's the kind of motivation that they do. I'm serious. I save them all. Somebody ever wants to do a story on, and texting people is the new way to go. That's the most efficient thing you can do. You don't cost you pay for postage stamps, you have to pay for anything. And I can say stop, but they're so amusing. I don't want to give it up.
Catherine in Georgetown, Texas says, What are your thoughts about the Stephen Miller, Russell Voigt machine enabling Trump to stay in office in perpetuity? Catherine, at the risk of naivete here, I think Trump will do anything he can get away with. They're going to try to rig the 26th election. They're trying to fix the economic statistics. They will do anything. The rule of law is irrelevant to them. I don't think they can get away with this. Not that they wouldn't try, but I just think there's enough history, enough law that this would be even a step too far for this Trump loyal Supreme Court. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I think of all the things to worry about, I right now wouldn't have that in my top 10.
Well, I don't know, man. Russell Voigt may be the most dangerous person in America. First of all, he's not stupid. He's thought all of this out. This is something that they had been planning forever. It's right there in Project 2025. Stephen Miller is, strikes me as one of the most weird people I've ever seen, but he has real clout. And I think they're running around. Pete Headsmith, I don't think he knows his ass from a hole in the ground. But Russell Voigt is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them. Not at all. And he's a fanatic, and this is like kind of lifetime mission is, and he's executing it.
Yeah, no, that is the case, sadly. But I don't think they're going to get away with letting Trump stay in office after 20. First of all, I'm not sure. I don't think the voters are letting him stay in office.
That'd be right. Could you imagine what the town hall would look like if Trump wouldn't leave office?
Oh my God!
God, you know how many people would be marching? Oh, no, that's not. Very little that I wouldn't put past these people, but that's one thing I wouldn't worry about.
Yeah, I had a wild thought. I don't know. I was on a long airplane trip back from Paris yesterday, and I had a wild thought about that. I think Trump might try to do something to push his son, running mate or whatever have you, but he ain't going to be on a ticket in 28. Nate in Leavenworth, Kansas.
Oh, wow.
Who is who is free in Leavenworth, Kansas, asked, for the love of God, tell Kamala Harris not to run for president again. I'm terrified the party people will vote for her because that's what party people do. James.
I'm not. Don't be terrified. And I think that she wisely chose not to run for governor of California, and I believe this with all my heart. Anybody that had anything to do with 2024, the party wants to move on from that. I don't say it's anybody's fault, but I'm just telling you that, and this goes to Waltz too. I wouldn't run again. That would be if I were your friend, if I were your chief advisor. I'm doing this not from a personal standpoint. This is not going to be the environment that a 2024 that the Democrats are not going to look to anybody that had anything to do with the 2024 campaign. I really believe.
I completely agree, and I would add one thing. Joe Biden, would you please go and take the restful retirement you so richly reserve, and don't speak out. People really don't want to hear your views now. And when I read the story the other day that some of the people close to him are going to try to seek some kind of vengeance against the Nancy Pelosi's, get over it. Get over it. Just, stay in Rehoboth and enjoy your grandchildren.
I had a couple of people complain about Harris, going on TV, but she wrote a book. Everybody loses a presidential campaign. She should be on TV. That's fine. I don't think that's, she's entitled to do that. But I don't think it would be wise for her to run for the nomination of the Democratic Party. I just don't. Yeah. I think it would be in her interest.
I agree. John in Sonoma, California, ask, isn't Trump's gaping vulnerability his ties to the heartless billionaires and arrogant elites? And isn't Epstein the icon for all that's wrong with Trump? Seems like a good message to me. Certainly I would say Epstein is a great message for the corruption and the scandal of this administration. And I think you tie the ties to the billionaires and the arrogant elites, you tie that into that big, beautiful bill that took care of all of them and really screwed people on Medicaid. There are veterans who aren't going to get food stamps because of that big, beautiful bill. But every one of those billionaires, Steve Witkoff and all the others, they're going to do great. So I think you can tie those together, James.
Well, sometimes they're saying the broken clock is right twice a day. We would kind of scoff with these people, a lot of really right-wingers and, deep in the internet and, really right-wing podcasts said, look, there's a coastal elite out there that are harvesting young girls and using them for their own pleasure. And this goes very deep. And, you got to say they were right. It just didn't have the right coastal elite. But by any stretch of the definition, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are the personification of coastal elites. So sometimes you got to say that, hey, these people had a point. They weren't at the Comet Pizza. It was actually in Trump Tower in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Andrew in Jacksonville, Florida, says, I'm old enough to remember the safe, legal, and rare slogan during the Clinton administration. The Democrats embraced to talk about abortion. Why can't Democrats adopt a similar slogan for immigration? What about safe, sane, and humane?
They just shut down the last Planned Parenthood facility in Louisiana, and of course the governor's taking all the credit in the world. So I got to say that when the Kansas thing came in 2022, the elections, I thought that abortion was a really good issue for Democrats. It didn't play a big role in 2024. And for whatever reason, and I'm just being very frank here, it doesn't seem to be driving a lot of voting behavior. And my only explanation is people that live in blue states said, I want to always have access to the kind of reproductive care that people need. and maybe the people in red states have kind of quit. I don't know, but I thought it would be a more prominent issue in American politics in 2024 and even today.
Well, James, I think you're correct, but let me give you an important caveat. If, as I think, could well happen, and Trump orders the FDA, he'll try not to have any fingerprints, to crack down on the mailing of the birth control pill, because they're going, states like Texas and Massachusetts are sending that medication to people in Texas and Louisiana and elsewhere. And your state, Louisiana, has tried to bring a criminal case against them. Don't have any chance. But if the FDA does that, they really try to crack down on the Medicaid pill, I think that'll revive that issue.
I mean, and the pill, mifepristone, I might be mispronouncing, that's overwhelmingly today number of abortions are as a result of that pill. It's just going to be more and more going forward. I don't think anybody doubts that. And yeah, he could do something. These states could make it, a felony to send it to, if you live in Louisiana and you get a prescription from a doctor in New York or get it filled, they're going to make that illegal. And, people need to stop thinking of this as like back alley abortions or coat hangers or whatever we did. It's more and more about just the drug-induced pregnancy termination thing. So yes, it's going to be. I don't know that Trump will fool with it. He's got some political survival instincts, and I don't know if that's the hill he
does. Except as you look at the numbers, and they really are growing a lot in places like Texas, I think that very powerful right to life constituency may demand something.
They might. And I'll put it past them. They do anything. So, it's punitive.
Yeah.
It hurts women. God damn it. You birth control, put an aspirin between your knees and keep it there. And that's the best medical birth. I mean, I don't think it's crazy.
I think that's right. And you can't, the legal issue, the legal threat is really almost non-existent, because states like New York and I believe Massachusetts have passed so-called shield laws. So those doctors are protected. I mean, if you're in Louisiana and you want to sue a doctor in New York, you know what? You got to do it in New York. And you ain't going to win.
And I don't trust these bastards. They could, they would like prosecute the woman. I mean, they're crazy. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah.
They're that crazy.
Well, that brings back the issue, I think, then. I agree it certainly, if not vanished, it certainly lessened as a political issue in 24. That would bring it back. But listen, keep those letters coming in. If we didn't get to yours this week, we'll try to get to it next week. The hardest chore I have here is picking which, 6 or 7 to read every week, because there's so many good ones. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show @Politicon. Remember, following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you check out the link to our sponsor, Green Chef, in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them, because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. To keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go and take a look. You can also find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel, or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.